Welcome to another broadcast of Truth Be Told, where we believe in experience becomes truth. I'm your host, Tony Sweet, and joining me as usual, we have the one and only Captain Ron. Today, we go to the other side with the help of a very talented psychic, actually the psychic lawyer, Mark Anthony. Mark, who is a world-renowned fourth-generation science-based evidential psychic medium who communicates with spirits. He has been featured regularly on major television shows such as CBS award-winning shows like The Doctors. He is also the author of the best-selling book called Evidence of Eternity and Never Letting Go. And Mark likes to combine his gifts as a psychic medium with his experience as an attorney. He relates to each client on a personal level, and his positive personal demeanor is an uplifting influence for people coping with the aftermath of a life-threatening, life-changing, or life-ending trauma. We also want to touch on some unsolved mysteries that Mark has worked with. So we want to welcome to Truth Be Told, where we believe in experience becomes truth, the psychic lawyer, Mark Anthony.
I didn't even mention that whole attorney part of it either. The lawyer thing, yeah.
Well, Mark is back. We're so happy to have you in studio with us again.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for having me on the show. I love Truth Be Told. I love working with you and with Captain Ron. And I can't say enough good things about what you're doing.
Well, what's funny is Truth Be Told started out as average guys wanting to know answers.
Well, above average.
There you go.
Careful.
Well, if you would see my report card, it would be below average.
Hey, don't sell yourself short. Albert Einstein said, "Everyone is a genius. Just don't ask a fish to climb a tree."
I've done that once.
So we're all good at something different. Right. And I like what you said. Two average guys wanting to know answers. What is the first step to wisdom? Is saying, "I don't know."
Mm. And I do that often.
we all do. We all do. You know, it's like it's not so much sometimes having the answers, but knowing the right questions.
True. That is true. And I think that's why we always tell people we're not experts. We're just enthusiasts that bring experts on that have lived the life, that have done the research and traveled the world to bring us and our audience the wisdom of the ancients. And that's one thing I think we're going to touch on today is last time you were on, we touched on quite a few different things, but some of these ancient sites, we really didn't dive into it because a lot of people are archaeologists that we have on, but we don't have a lot of psychics that actually talk about.
Real quick, before we ask him a question, I wanted to say that we were just saying before we went on how Mark is interesting. Not only does he have these psychic abilities, he is way more diverse than that. He's gone to different ancient sites. He explores these things. He's a student of history too. You're very knowledgeable in all kinds
from a very young age,
and that's great. And then that gives us a much more rounded things. It's really great.
Right.
I really appreciate.
Well, thank
that.
you. I've always been fascinated in planet Earth. Mm-hmm. Ever since the mothership dropped me off.
Yeah, here we go.
Speaking of which, when are you guys unveiling the new logo for Truth Be Told? They just showed to me.
Now, see, that was off record. That was private conversation.
Yeah, but this is exciting. I'm going to tell the listeners. They have come up with an absolutely dynamic new logo for the show, and I think it's awesome. So I can't wait to see it all over the place. Good job, because it sums things up. And you know what? I think, Tony, when it comes out, let's do a contest. Put it out to the listeners that they have to write on your website what it evokes in them.
That's a good idea.
What do they think? How does it make you feel, and why do you feel that way?
Because I think it can be very... a lot of people is going to give us their own opinion on how they feel, what comes to them, because it does. When you look at it, everybody's going to have their own view.
It's like being a psychic lawyer. Okay, that always gets a reaction.
They're like, what?
Yeah, you know, when I was
how does that work?
when I was practicing law full time, and I'd be at a social event, and say, well, what do you do? I'm a lawyer. Oh, that always evoked an immediate reaction.
Sure.
If you say
negative,
that,
probably, right?
Oh, usually, and I hate lawyers. Why do you hate lawyers? Well, I was arrested once, and oh, okay, so the lawyer made you get arrested, right? Or I was in an accident that I caused, and the lawyer made you cause the accident. And then when you tell people that you're a psychic medium and you talk to dead people, that always evokes a reaction. So
these days probably mostly positive, at least. I would think.
In a lot of circles, there's still a lot of people that are mired in primitive, fear-based, superstitions, and they have a right to be primitive and superstitious and filled with fear.
Right.
I love his perspective. I really do.
That's always a positive one.
Should we start talking about some of these ancient sites?
I think we should start traveling the world. So, Mark, let's start with where you started the first ancient site or ruin that you, I guess, that really stood out to you, that made an impact or energy or something spoke to you more than
wow.
others. What was the first one?
Stonehenge. I was attending Oxford University while I was going to law school.
Right.
And I decided one Friday to kind of blow off class, and two friends and I, we took a train to Salisbury. You see, we'd look at it as like Salisbury, as in the steak, but it's Salisbury, and Stonehenge was near there. And when we approached it, I just had this overwhelming sense of awe. And it's funny because there's people from all over the world there, and a bunch of American tourists were complaining that that's all there is. I thought it'd be bigger. And I'm like, really? Are you expecting a Spielberg-esque effect to come out of the sky? I said, do you have any idea what you're looking at? And they're like, well, a bunch of stones. I said, yes, built 4,500 years ago during the time of the pyramids. And the stones that were used to construct Stonehenge come from over 150 miles away in Wales. So the question is, how did the people who lived here transport these immense monoliths that weigh several tons from the coast of Wales to the interior of southern England? And then when I was at Oxford, I was conferring with one of my professors. And Stonehenge is a series of rings. There's an inner ring, an outer ring.
I'm showing a picture of it right now.
Okay, great. And if you take a Geiger counter, there's spots all throughout the Earth where there's radiation coming up.
Hold on. Not only how did they get there, why?
Exactly, why? Okay, and we do know that a number of the stones will line up with the sun on the winter solstice and the vernal equinox and the summer solstice. So obviously it is some form of timekeeping device, calendar. But with the rings, the Earth has areas where there's natural radiation that comes up. And if you take a Geiger counter and go to the outer ring, all of a sudden the amount of radiation kicks up. When you go to the inner ring, it kicks up even more. And when you go to the center ring, there's an even higher amount of radiation.
Really?
Now, these are
hold on. Excuse me, Mark. May I ask you this? Is this the ley lines that they talk about, or is this different?
This is the rings. I mean, right where a ring of stone starts.
I mean, the ley lines on the Earth that they say are the energy grid of the Earth. Is
it
similar to that, or is
yes,
it different?
Well, it could be. It could be. And these were Oxford professors who are telling me this. And the big question that they were saying is, and how is it that people 4,500 years ago knew where radiation increased? To the line.
Wow.
So, and what's funny is because, and with all due respect to the folks that are Wiccans and pagans, I love the way the Wiccan movement has adopted Stonehenge. And just because you jump around Stonehenge naked on the summer solstice doesn't make it a Wiccan thing. Right. And people say, well, the Druids built it. Actually, it predates the Druids.
Really?
Yeah, we're talking 4,500 years ago. Yeah, and the fascinating thing is that this is the same time period where roughly like 3,500 miles away in Egypt, during the Fourth Dynasty, the Egyptians were building the Great Pyramids on the Giza Plateau. Now, I'm not saying that there is any connection between the two.
Is there any similarities other than the time period?
As far as I know, from an architectural and archaeological standpoint, there has not been a connection. I know a lot of the ancient alien people will say, well, that's obviously when they came, and maybe it was. But it is interesting that in that time frame, you have these very sophisticated forms of construction going on, all of which were based on the alignment of the sun at particular times during the year. So when I first saw Stonehenge, it was just, to me, so overwhelming. I was sitting there and like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. And so I was explaining things like this to the American tourists who were saying,
where's Spinal Tap gonna play?
Yeah, where's Exactly. So that was one of the first archaeological sites that I visited that really wowed me.
So the people at that time that built this, could you tell us, or do you know much about the people who built this?
Well, we also know that there are several other formations like Stonehenge throughout southern England. Avebury is even larger than Stonehenge.
Really?
Yeah, and it's near the town of Avebury, Avebury. It's not as famous, but it's actually larger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's big.
Yeah, and Avebury has a similar purpose as Stonehenge. It appears to be aligned with, with the position of the sun. And then
even that one thing seems amazing. How did they do this thousands of years ago?
How did they figure this out?
On the equinox, that's fall on that day.
On that day. So, in ancient times, an observatory was a place that you could look at the stars at night. And you have to realize that they weren't competing with city lights. And these were also agrarian societies. So when you planted crops, was extreme. It still is, but we now have these industrial farms, and we crank out food, and Monsanto doing all this genetic engineering and things, which depends on which side you're on, how you feel about that. But in a primitive society, and also when I visited Machu Picchu in the mountains of Peru, it was a similar situation where stones were set up, and when the sun would appear between these two stones, that would indicate it was time to plant, and then it was time to harvest. So from a practical standpoint, these were created to keep the food supply and the population planting, and ergo feeding people.
That's pretty amazing to even, like you said, I wouldn't have never thought that.
It's amazing
to think about that.
Is it true that beyond the stones, didn't they find wooden pillars?
They did, which may indicate that initially it was a wooden structure, or maybe those were some of the markers they put out. And
in building it, maybe.
Yeah, maybe originally it was a series of wooden structures, and then as they developed the more sophistication to transport these stones, the wood was replaced with
Unless
the
a wolf came and blew the wood thing over, and then they decided, well, we're going to build it in stone. And
I mean, the story of the three little pigs had to come from somewhere.
See?
Yeah. Now, the place where they actually got the stone, I wonder why they got the stone where they got the stone. Is there no other place to get that?
That particular stone.
Or why not just any stone?
That I don't know, but I do know that where they got it from in Wales, the stone, I guess it's smoother, or it was the texture and the quality of what they wanted.
Think about the work to get it.
But how would you go around the countryside just going, not that one?
Yeah, I mean, if one of these sections of a monolith weighs 20,000 pounds,
right? Okay,
how do you get it 150 miles? Did they have the wheel? Okay. Did they use boats at least to run it down the coast nearby? I mean, it's
to
like
get it on the boat would be
crazy. we take a wrench.
Right.
We take a wrench for granted. All right, but there was a whole series of inventions of tools to get to the point to create the wrench to create doing these things.
Right.
It had to be important to use that too, because why would you go through such work to move that 150 miles?
Right.
That's insane.
Psychically, though, when you're there, you said you were overwhelmed. But did you feel spirits? Did you feel terrestrials? Did you feel?
I felt energy.
I
felt very positive energy. Very positive energy.
And do you think that was the radiation area, or do you think it's the stones?
It could be because the fact that we're all psychic to varying degrees, but for people who are hypersensitive. What we're tuning into is energy, into frequency, and radiation is part of the electromagnetic spectrum, which is what we're talking about, at least on two of the shows here on Truth Be Told, about quantum, quanta and electromagnetic energies being the basis for spirit communication. So basically what's going on at Stonehenge is simply a different frequency with the electromagnetic spectrum. So I got a real good feeling from that.
That's good.
All right, let's go on to. He was talking about Machu Picchu. Why don't we go on to there?
Let's go
Isn't it true that was only discovered 100 years ago?
Well, the local Quechua Indians knew that it was there, and the gentleman, the Westerner, Hiram Bingham, Bingham, and he was looking for the lost cities, and basically a group of Quechua Indians says, "Oh, we'll show you where it is," and so they went to Machu Picchu and started clearing away brush, and wow. And what's fascinating about Machu Picchu is it appears that it was a city of about 10,000 people.
That's amazing right there.
Yes, and the food supply, once again, coming to food, and we'll get to that whole talk about food momentarily. They built terraces along the mountains to grow the food. Mm-hmm. It appears that it was populated mainly by women who were virgins dedicated to the god of the sun. And the Inca, who was the emperor, the ruler of Incan society, it was kind of more of a resort town than it had any political or economic wherewithal to it.
So not much of a spiritual, like you would think being.
It was totally spiritual. That's why it was the Virgins of the Sun God, because there's also an altar there erected for human sacrifice.
No pun intended.
And
nice.
I had, let me tell you, I had one of the weirdest, one of the many weird experiences in my life. I remember, we saw the altar in the distance. I was with some friends. We were goofing around, and I was standing in this hut, and all of a sudden I had this flash, and it was incredible because I could see a whole line of priests and dignitaries all lined up wearing feathers.
Oh,
in the Incan costume, and it was one of those things that just lasted for about 5 seconds. But I will never forget it. And
do you think you were flashing
very
to a time of what that maybe was?
Yeah, I think I was picking up on matter retains memory, and it was also, from what I understand, considered a great honor to be sacrificed there. This wasn't like the Aztecs where they would go and capture people and drag them and rip their hearts out. Being sacrificed, that's why the Virgins of the Sun God went there, and it was considered a great honor. Now, I probably shouldn't say this on the radio, but since it's been a while. So on my way to Machu Picchu, I met this woman who was a voodoo high priestess from Brazil. And we hit it off, and I was talking, and I was with a friend from Germany, and this nurse, and a friend of mine, another friend of mine who worked at a museum, and she said, "We will go to the Temple of the Sun tonight." I said, "But Machu Picchu's closed at night." She goes, "Don't worry, I have it under control." So we get to the front gate at night, and we all gave the guards there $5 each, and they let us into Machu Picchu at night.
Way.
Yeah, I know.
Don't say that on the air, man.
I know.
Yeah, no, right.
Next thing you know, Peruvian secrets.
Yeah.
And so we went to the Temple of the Sun, and she starts doing this whole prayer to the gods, and she had these special biscuits that she's throwing into the chasm, and I'm sitting there going, the only thing missing is a UFO and Shirley MacLaine. I mean, that's the only, it's like...
In no particular order.
In no particular order. And it was one of the coolest things ever.
Then she said, "Get naked and lay on the sacrifice table." Right?
Yeah, I was a little concerned about that. Yeah. But one of the interesting things is that when we turned off our flashlights, she said, "I want you to look at the city of Machu Picchu." And I swear.
Now, where are you standing at this point?
We're at the Temple of the Sun. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, are you looking down on that famous thing that we were looking at?
It's all around you. It's
okay,
one
so
of
you're
the pinnacles.
In the middle.
Oh yeah, we are in.
Is this it?
So is it above you, these ruins?
They're above, below, around.
Oh, so you're literally in the center.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Temple of the Sun?
Temple of the Sun. It's got like an altar. It's got a throne on it, actually.
This says a sun temple, but I don't know if that's it.
That doesn't look like it. I'll know it when I see it. There's like a big... Yeah, actually, that is it. That's part of it. Actually, there's like a platform all the way around that where we're standing.
So where are you in relation to this picture on the left here? Tony, if you could put the other picture up.
That's the Temple of the Sun.
Yeah,
right
that's the Temple of the Sun. All right, so we were walking around, and Machu Picchu is a fairly large area. So it's above and below. There's all different elevations. And she said, just look at the city. And all of a sudden we realized that the staircases that the Incas built all throughout there seemed to glow at night. And it appears that when the Incas were constructing it, they were using stone with a high amount of quartz crystal that had phosphorescence in it. Yeah. And think about it. It's a pre-electrical society, and they didn't say, oh, well, we don't have electricity, so we can't do anything at night. They figured it out, and so it actually glowed at night, and we found it was easier to navigate around the city without flashlights and just let this natural.
That's pretty awesome.
It was really
well. See,
cool.
Now that makes sense to me because I could see that they could see that these rocks glow. Hey, let's use these.
Exactly.
That makes logical
sense. And people were no less clever 1,000 or 4,000 years ago. Simply a different level of technology. And I will say one thing: Machu Picchu should be on anyone with any sense of adventure or intellect's bucket list. It is one of the great wonders of the world, and I will never forget. I was there for 3 days. I saw it at sunrise. I saw it at night. I saw it in the day, in the rain, and I'll never forget standing on a cliff, watching the sunset over Machu Picchu, and the tears just shot. I burst into tears. I was so overwhelmed, I cried. It was the most beautiful thing.
What is it? Just the natural beauty, or did you feel?
It was just. It was like watching a baby being born. It was that type of joy. It was incredible.
Wow.
And it was funny because I'm sobbing, and then there's like 2 or 3 people on the cliff with me, and I hear them all. It all just hit everybody. It's breathtaking.
That's awesome.
Well, I mean, I've heard many people that have been to Machu Picchu talking about the amount of UFOs that are sighted around Machu Picchu.
Yes, the very high mountain that they always show in the pictures, that appears to be where most of the activity. If you go to the picture, see where you have it outlined in the one grid. It's just to the upper right of that in the smaller box.
To your left,
all the way to your left.
No, you're on the wrong window. The next
wrong window.
This one.
There you go.
Right there.
That's it.
The very tall mountain there. There's also a staircase that goes all the way up there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there's a throne at the top, and that's where the Inca emperor would come and sit and
overlook his.
Right, because he was also considered a god on Earth. But from what the locals, because I was asking the Quechua Indians that live there, I go, so what's with the UFOs? I go, oh, they come here, and they seem to hover around that peak. Now you can speculate if it happens, or if it happens, why it happens, what they're looking for. It's just fascinating. It's fascinating. I mean, you could spend a long time there.
Yeah, I definitely want to go. Aren't you going?
We're going in hopefully March.
That's awesome. Yeah. All right. So I mean, Machu Picchu, like you said, is kind of a number one bucket list for many people. But is there another one of significance that you've been to that just?
Well, here in the U.S., the Honanki Ruins outside of Sedona, and there's a number of tours. I highly recommend the Pink Jeep tours, but there's other tours as well. I don't want to step on other tour groups' toes. That will take you out there, and it's on federal parks. And what's fascinating is that they basically built apartment buildings over 800 years ago. Wow. And what I found there. And I've also visited Mayan ruins in Central America.
That looks like an upgrade from my apartment, so I don't know if that...
they were pretty sophisticated stuff. And it appears that it wasn't far from an ancient riverbed, which makes sense because you have to have a water supply for food. And there's these plants nearby that grow these berries that taste like little Granny Smith apples.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were really good. Where I was like, making sure everybody else is tasting them first.
Right, you don't know if you're eating some
keel over or some hallucinogenic thing, and I want to be running around in the desert, filled with Western Diamondback rattlers and such. But there's a language carved all throughout the rocks that archaeologists have still been unable to decipher. What is fascinating is that let's go over to Cape Cod. All right, we all know the story of the first Thanksgiving, or at least our version of it. So the Pilgrims land, and basically they're starving to death, and the local Indians, Squanto in particular, taught them a secret. Take corn, a bean, and a squash seed and plant the 3 of them together. And what happens is the squash springs up with these big leaves that shade the very tender corn and bean sprouts. The corn then shoots up. The beans then grow. The bean vine
Around
grows around the corn. Okay, and there's a symbiotic relationship between the three plants, and when planted together, they actually help each other produce the best squash, the best corns, and the best beans. They're more stable. They don't compete for the same nutrients. And I think the beans feed on a nutrient that would be harmful to the squash and so on and so forth. So symbiotic. Well, the Honanki Indians were doing the same thing. Now, we're talking the Pilgrims. It's roughly year 1620s. And the Honankis, they went, that fell into ruins 800 years earlier. So that would have been in the 1200s, from year 1000 to 1200. Then when I was in Central America, the Mayans planted corn, bean, and squash. And when I was in Peru, the ancient Incas and their forebears also planted corn, bean, and squash, which are known as the Three Sisters. Now, how is it that Native American peoples from Canada to the Andes and beyond are all doing the same thing? So there had to be some form of communication on a bicontinental basis. Yeah, and here on Truth Be Told, we know that there are no coincidences. There is synchronicity, a complex set of events, seemingly random, which lead to an outcome. Sometimes it's a very good outcome. Sometimes it's a very negative outcome. But something was going on before the Europeans arrived in the New World, and somebody figured this out, some genius thousands of years ago, and then this caught on. So clearly this concept that the Native Americans just sort of sitting around, being stagnant.
Whatever grows, grows.
Whatever
right.
grows, grows. Not at all. An extremely sophisticated society. And there was trade going on, and they understood enough, And let me tell you something. What a great bargaining chip. Okay? Let's negotiate, and I will give you the secret how to grow the most productive crops to feed an entire population. And so then when you start going to the Incan ruins in Machu Picchu, you have the Temple of the Sun, but there's also several other structures which, like Stonehenge, are lined up to indicate when the vernal equinox is happening, when the summer solstice is happening, when the autumnal equinox is happening, all 4 seasons. And then the Mayans, big surprise, in Central America are doing the same thing.
So you think this got spread around, this knowledge got spread around the earth?
It appears so. It appears so. Now, maybe aliens and UFOs brought it. Maybe it was just trade and negotiation. Or maybe there was a more sophisticated form of communication.
Well, they used to say that they always thought the oceans and water was a impediment to these ancient cultures, but now they think they were like highways.
It would appear so.
It seems like, right?
It seems so because no society can function without food. Okay, so when you go from a primitive society of hunter-gatherers, all right, that's based, you're scrounging around. But when you start forming communities and then you start cultivating crops.
Growing 3 things together purposely because they work together is way past hunter-gatherer.
It's way past, and it's actually more sophisticated than the invention of fire. Okay, you think fires are, a great thing, but understanding the mystery of the seed, because now you can feed an entire population. This is a huge leap in civilization. And part of the problem is when Europeans came and invaded the New World, they looked at the native populations as being inferior and barbaric and so on and so forth. And it's a shame that it couldn't have been done differently. But that's
I'd love to have
history.
those Maiden codexes now, right?
Wouldn't it?
To read all that stuff. Can you imagine?
So you said the 4 different cultures, were they closer to the ocean at all, or to the coastlines? Or were they more inland?
Well, certainly the New England Indians were doing that, but then again, Indians in the Southwest, which is very far from the ocean.
2,500 miles away.
Right, and Mesoamerica, which is the Mayan Aztec cultures, part of it's along the coast, but other parts are in the middle of Central America. The Incans, although they did have ships, they were more of a mountain people, the Andes Mountains. So so it seems like all these different desert.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Jungle,
so it couldn't just
mountain.
be the highway of the ocean. So
no, it had to be something else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's can't like you pick up your cell
Well,
phone.
you know,
In
we're always
addition to, right.
Yeah.
well, we're always looking for these, really dynamite mysteries in the ancient ruins, but understanding like something like a food supply and organizing an entire civilization on that, because until you can feed your population and then have surplus food, you do not have leisure or spare time within which to erect huge cities like Chichen Itza, Zabanche, Cajunlich, Machu Picchu, Cuzco, throughout
See, that makes
the New
perfect
World.
sense because that's our lives too. I mean, first you got to get a roof over your head. You got to get a job. You got to get, and then you start worried about
How to feed, how to
DVD
keep
players.
Yeah,
And
right.
nonsense,
Absolutely. So these are very, very vital things and fascinating, I think.
Well, I'm gonna ask this. And majority of the cultures that we're talking about are, again, they're no longer there. So why do you feel that if they knew how to prolong their feeding, their crops, and they have the waters, and why do you think majority of these have disappeared? Was it because of the Europeans, majority of it, or?
Well, with the Honanki Indians, it appears that the rivers dried up, so they moved, and it seems like they maybe became, I think, the Arapahoes and the Navajos, so they moved.
Yeah.
But what we don't learn in history class is that when the Spaniards landed in South America, within 10 years, 90% of the Native American population died from smallpox, influenza, chicken pox, because they had no immunities. And it spread into South America. And so when Pizarro's troops landed and were marching on Cuzco, the Incan army, which numbered 100,000 men, was so sick, most of them couldn't even stand, and they were defeated by 150 Spaniards. 150 for a couple of reasons. Number one, they were so sick they couldn't fight. Number two, they didn't have gunpowder or cannons, which the Spaniards did. And number three, they were terrified of horses. And when they saw mounted troops, they thought it was some type of like centaur, like human-animal hybrid, godlike creature, which just struck terror into them. So biological warfare did a huge deal on that. Like where I come from in Florida, there was a Native American nation known as the AIS Indians, and they're extinct now because of chickenpox, smallpox, completely wiped out by European diseases. And so that's why these cultures disappeared. And the Aztecs, when the Spaniards landed, they must be gods, because they had a myth or a belief that a white god with a beard named Quetzalcoatl would land. And as it turned out, Cortez landed on the day of Quetzalcoatl's celebration. So clearly the prophecy had been fulfilled. Meanwhile, the Mayans were like, he's not a god. So the Mayans retreated into the jungles. The Aztecs welcomed him and, were defeated. But the Mayans, it took almost another 150 years to subdue. The Mayans put up a big fight, yeah. Sick or not, they weren't rolling over like the Aztecs did.
Wow. Well, let's move on from these great ancient sites. Let's move on to something more current, I would guess. You went to Germany as well. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
I did. When I was 19, I went to Dachau concentration camp. Now, it's difficult for a medium under any circumstances to go to a place like that because matter retains energy. And Dachau concentration camps right outside of Munich, it was, I think, the first extermination camp created. And I remember hearing it was a smaller one. Only 40,000 people were executed. Yeah, only 40,000 were executed there. So, I'd been in Munich, and I was in college, and I knew I could see spirits and all that stuff, but I wasn't thinking about it. We were at the Hofbrauhaus, drinking. I got these big beers, and and I'm all hung over with my college buddies, and so we pull up on this bus, and we get out. We're walking around, and all of a sudden, I saw these images of thousands. It was horrible. thousands of shrieking people, and they're in those white and black striped concentration camp, and they were reaching out to me and shrieking and shrieking, and I burst into tears, and I started like freaking out, and I went down on my knees, and I was shaking, and my friend's like, dude, what is your problem? You know?
Was this similar to the experience at Machu Picchu where you saw?
Yeah, the one at Machu Picchu was beautiful and wonderful. This was absolutely horrifying. Yeah, and most of the people that I was on the trip with didn't know me, but there was one of my friends, David, and he knew something was going on with me, and I'll never forget. He went over and he grabbed me under the arm. He goes, dude, he's had too much to drink. He's totally hungover. Got to get him out of here. And he goes, I don't know what's going on with you, but I know I got to get you out of here. And he got me on a bus, you know, and I remember getting out of there.
So you weren't even there long at all?
I was there about a half hour.
Wow.
But it started building, and then it hit me so hard, and I knew I couldn't even go near the crematorium. I mean, I wanted to vomit. I was shaking. I was crying. You know, it was kind of embarrassing, you know, being 19 and, you know, doing that in front of, you know, all your college friends.
Right.
But I remember Dave getting me out of there, and I go, thank you. He goes, don't mention it. Because he knew, you know, like it was rumored in the neighborhood about my mom. You know, everybody knew my mom could see the future, and she could see spirits. So we were kind of like the weird, you know, we were sort of like the Addams family in the neighborhood. But we weren't like weird about it. I mean, my dad was a NASA engineer, and mom was a commercial illustrator, and, you know, and a mom, and, you know, we, as best we could, fit into society. And I'm the first one in the family that's gone public with it. But if I had been properly prepared, if I had been cognizant that this could happen. It's like I'm with my manager, Rocky, and we went to visit Ground Zero. That was a couple years ago. I think right after Never Letting Go, my first book came out, and I braced myself. Okay, I said, I knew this was going to be hell, and it was. And it was.
Was it the same thing? Did you see people again, or how did
I
it feel?
could feel it, but I was like, okay, I needed to keep it at bay. But I think we were there about a half hour. I said I can't take it anymore because I could only shield it for so long.
Right.
You know, because I could feel the sorrow and the agony. But I want to say this about the 9/11 memorial. It has got to be one of the most tasteful and elegant memorials because they have the bases where the two towers stood, and it's a waterfall, and it flows, and you can't see the bottom of it. It's flowing like into infinity. It's just so breathtaking. It's elegant. It honors these people. It's majestic. It is the most appropriate and beautiful memorial. Cool. Yeah, I highly recommend it.
I wonder if you had any of the experience, like, what about like the Aztecs and stuff? You said how they would reach in and tear your heart out with their hand. Did you feel that? Like, did you go to Tiwanaku or some of these places?
Well, we were at Chichen Itza, and then we were at Kahunlich and Zabanche, which were cool because they're in the jungle, and like we were the only people there. You know, it was on my Mystical Mayan cruise that we did last year. So we had about a dozen people that were with us because some people didn't want to go into the jungle, and you know,
really,
yeah, I know.
Oh my God,
well,
that's the whole point of going.
Let me tell you, we saw the stuff running around in the grass. The scorpions look like lobsters. I mean, they're huge. Like everything, you know, Florida's got bugs, but everything in Florida that's this big is like that big in Central America, and the scorpions were huge. Wow. And there's people walking around flip-flops. All right, for all the listeners, when you go to tropical rainforest, do not wear flip-flops.
Right.
Wear hiking boots, okay? Because there's things there that will bite you and kill you. I've been in rainforests in Central America, South America, the Caribbean, Southeast Asia. I'm thinking somewhere else. Certainly Hawaii, but that's a very benign rainforest. Right. Thailand was scary. I remember. The Amazon too. The Amazon. That's pretty scary jungle.
Oh yeah.
But I remember I was in Thailand, and I was up near the Laotian border, and we got these two guides, Ung and his wife Fu, and they're like this tall, you know, they're like these little tiny people, and they said, we go to see the Buddha of the mountain. Okay, so we're climbing up this mountain, and there's holes. I mean, the whole mountain was just like perforated with all these holes. And I go, oh, look at all the holes. No touch hole. I go, why? Cobra. Many cobra. I'm like, cobras. And I'm looking around. There's like holes everywhere. And they go, good, not raining. When rain, water fill hole, cobra come out. And I'm like, oh, God, please not rain. Please not rain. So then we get to the top of the mountain. And there's this cave, and there's an image of Buddha in the cave, this golden image of Buddha. And we walk in, and bats, like by the gazillions, come flying out. I'm like, great, we climb Cobra Mountain to go to the Bat Cave to see the Bat Buddha. But, and they're like, isn't this beautiful? And all I'm thinking is it's starting to get dark. All I want to do is get off Cobra Mountain, But it was, oh, my God.
Not a snake person.
And they got the King Cobra there and then all this. But it was very, very interesting. So anyway, I was getting off on a tangent.
No, actually, I was going to ask you before we get too far away from it. Dachau and even 9/11, the memorial. When you go there, is there any way for a psychic medium or somehow that we can go in there and help release those either souls that are tortured or just the heaviness of that? Is there any way that somebody can do that? I know it's a lot of people that were killed there.
Well, I know Gettysburg.
Right.
I haven't been to Gettysburg. Well, maybe I was when I was a kid. I've been to Vicksburg, Battle of Vicksburg, but I haven't been to Gettysburg. And I understand there's every psychic that goes there they see things.
Yeah.
I used to be of the opinion that there were spirits that were somehow trapped here. I no longer believe that, and it's because of my study of quantum physics.
Imprints then?
It is. Okay, there's three schools of thought on a haunting. One, that it's a spirit trapped here. Two, that they're not trapped here, but they like to come back and visit. And that's the one that I subscribe to. Mm-hmm. And three, that that it is a residual energy echo. So when you see like a soldier at Gettysburg or the Dachau victims of the Holocaust. Right. That's not actually a sentient spirit. Mm-hmm. It's no more a sentient spirit than your reflection in a mirror is you. Okay?
Wow. Okay.
So think of it as an echo is no more your voice. It's an echo.
So that's what you're seeing, like when you were in Machu Picchu, when you saw these old priests. That's all it was saying.
Exactly.
Okay.
I saw like this energy echo. And there are ways to go in and to interrupt the echo. It's funny because there's this, I won't mention the place, but there's this restaurant in Central Florida, and I was there with a friend of mine, and she's a psychic medium, and we were having dinner, and it's supposedly haunted, which is great for business. I mean, haunting is good for business. I mean, people want to go to this restaurant and go, woo, And so we picked up on the energy echo, and we did this thing to kind of, it's like if it's an echo, you interrupt it. And that's what like exorcisms and house clearings and things that the paranormal groups do. So we deflected it away, and she tells the manager, and he goes, "You did what?" Right. I mean, the guy was like losing his mind. No, get her back, get the ghost back. We're like, no, it wasn't a sentient. No, I don't care, because apparently haunting is good for business. And I haven't been back since because I know he was really ticked off.
You're a little too into this. Well, we have about 7 minutes left. I know this is.
We got to. Oh yeah, I forgot.
And you're definitely you're a fixture for Truth Be Told because anytime you're in town, you're gonna be here. But Captain Ron has never had a psychic reading. Mm-mm. Would you be willing to?
Sure, I'll be happy to. But let me for all the listeners.
Give some of your.
Yeah, I'm on tour, and I'll be in Denver at the Arvada Center for Arts, doing an evening of spirit communication. That will be on Saturday, July 29th, and then I will be the keynote speaker at the IANS, International Association Near-Death Studies, a couple days later in Westminster, which is just outside of Denver. So it's Denver proper.
Oh, you do near-death experience stuff, too, NDE stuff.
Oh yeah. How about the next show we do about NDE?
Do NDE show.
I would love that.
Yeah. I was going to bring that up, but when we got into the ancient mysteries and archological sites,
that's hard for us to pass that up. But NDEs would be we do a whole show on NDEs.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a little kid, I had an NDE, and both my parents did, and so these things have always been part of my life. So if people want to find out about getting tickets to these events, just please visit my website, which is evidenceofeternity.com. You can follow me on Facebook, on YouTube, and there'll be my summer tours right on the front page. Just click on that, and it'll give you all the detail. So I'll be doing a gallery event where I'll be connecting random, audience members with loved ones in spirit, and then I will also then be speaking at IANS as well.
What's IANS?
International Association of Near-Death Studies. Thank you for making me clarify that. We knew this. We work with it so much. Okay. All right. So let's see if I can pick up on any spirits around you, Ron. Immediately. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Woo! You got some folks here. All right. All right. There's a male energy coming back. He feels it coming in. And he feels like he could be a generation above you or the one above that. So it could be on the parent or the grandparent level. Now, here's what I'm getting with this guy. I feel this draining sensation going right through him. Now, the draining sensation, Ron, indicates to me that his passing was not a quick event. So he had like a disease that takes you down a click at a time. It could be cancer. It could even just be old age, okay? But I'm seeing his throat looking really, really thin. And what I'm getting with him is this blockage in my mind. So this is indicating to me something was going on in his head. But to me, it feels like a dementia, possibly dementia, Alzheimer's, feel very similar. So he was having a very difficult time maintaining mental focus and clarity. And then I'm tasting a lot of blood. And then I'm seeing, so what this could also indicate is that when he actually did die, it could have been an aneurysm or a stroke, because I'm getting like a bleed out in the head. And I'm also, getting a lot of incoherence prior to him passing. Does any of this resonate or make sense to you?
Absolutely.
Okay. He wants you to know that all that stuff is gone. That's just an indicator. And it's funny because I know lots of people drink coffee, but he's put this big blue Folgers coffee can, and he's opening up, and I'm smelling the coffee, and he's handing it to you. What's with you and the coffee?
He's a big coffee guy.
He was the coffee guy.
Not me, him.
Okay, it's interesting. Normally I go through a whole explanation. That's a double hit. You don't drink coffee. He loved coffee. Okay. Rabbits. Is there something with you and rabbits? Okay. That's okay. That's okay. Rabbits are also an indicator for a time frame. This could be a significant birth, death, anniversary, or event. Wait a second. Did you ever go to the Playboy Club?
No, I have not.
Because he showed me the Playboy logo with the little Playboy and the bunny ears.
That I don't know.
I know that's kind of a defunct thing, but there's something about I think there's something in his past that he doesn't want to say on the air in front of millions of people. All right, but it could also be a time frame between March 10th and April 20th. Significant births, deaths, anniversaries, or events connected to him or you or him. In what way?
Birth.
Okay. What it is, I associate rabbits with Easter. Okay, and that's what gives me that time frame. But the funny thing is, Ron, when he focuses on you, he shows that little, unless you're like the total babe magnet or something.
That's true.
Oh, is that true?
I hear people even on YouTube. We love his hair.
All right.
All right. So you're getting the babe magnet thumbs up from the other side. Okay. Was he? Wait a second. Now he's jumping tracks. He's showing me a diamond ring. Now, of course, most ladies have diamond rings, but diamonds are also the birthstone for the month of April. Which could be birthdays, anniversaries, events in the month of April. It could be significant to him or you or someone close to you in April, unless there's a diamond or diamond ring that makes sense to you in any way.
Not sure. He wore a diamond ring.
Bingo.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Okay, now let's get a message. See, what do you want Ron to know? Interesting. Keep expanding. Keep expanding. Keep expanding. Are you doing something with the show to expand it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It's something about, it's actually, and this is good news for you too, Tony. Something about the show. He goes, keep expanding, keep expanding. And I know I throw the term quantum around a lot because I work quantum physics, but he's talking about you're ready for the quantum leap. You're ready for the quantum leap. So I don't know what you guys have planned, but I'm getting this feeling that you're expanding the show. You're about to do this leap to something
bigger.
That's
the plan right there.
Oh,
yep.
Fantastic. You're getting big-time thumbs up. Big-time thumbs. Is this going to happen by September?
By November 1st, we thought, right?
Okay, because I'm seeing September.
Great.
Okay. All right,
well,
good.
Actually,
Good.
Never mind.
The quantum leap is coming. It's not going to go quite as smoothly as you think at first, but write it out. And it's funny because he shows like this, like you're in both of you actually are in a canoe and you're hitting the rapids, and it's like, and then all of a sudden it planes out. Okay? So whatever it is that you're doing is going to have a bit of a rough start, but you're going to make it just fine. Okay? Was there an Abigail, a Gail, or an Abigail, or an Abby?
No.
Does that make sense to you in any way?
Mm-mm.
I keep getting an Abby or an Abigail.
He lived on Abbey Shire.
Bingo. Now let me explain to you why. See, in my interpretation of things doesn't matter. Only yours does. Okay, and names I always get something close. He lived on Abbey Shire. I'm like Abby, Abigail. When a spirit gives me a message of an explanatory or advisory nature, like the quantum leap and whatever you guys are doing with the show, expanding, it's good, and it's going to kind of be off to a rough start, but give it 2-3 months and it'll plane out. That's great. Spirits know I want verification, so when they give me advisory or explanatory messages and then immediately follow it up with an objectively verifiable fact. Abbey, he lived on Abbeyshire Road. That's how you and I know that we have properly received and interpreted the message. Okay, now I realize that we are in the month of July, but he just put all this watermelon in front of me. Now, watermelon's my indicator for July. It could also mean a potassium issue, or you love watermelon, hate watermelon. Does that make sense in any way to you?
Well, it's funny you said potassium issue because he took potassium.
Bada bing, bada
Bada
verifiable fact. Okay, and so that's how spirits work with me because I'm an evidential medium, and people say, "Why don't they just tell it?" Because this isn't texting or instant messaging. What's happening is they're pure consciousness. They're emitting waves of frequency to me, and that electromagnetic energy then melds with the energy in my brain and gets translated into recognizable concepts. Now, that's not so woo-hooey because think about it. How are we communicating with each other? Through auditory frequency. Wow. So these sounds are hitting your eardrum, vibrating, being converted from mechanical energy into electrical energy, which goes into your brain, and you know what those sounds mean because your brain converts them into recognizable concepts. If I were speaking Chinese to you, you wouldn't understand until you started working with it. So that's why it's not texting or instant messaging. We're communicating with a different frequency, another dimension. They transmit this stuff to me because he knows that this whole thing, whatever it is you guys are doing, is weighing very heavily on your mind right now. But he also says you got to the blanket part, okay? It's like, do it. Okay, there's no turning back. We're doing it. And he said, stop worrying about it. Just do it.
Awesome.
He worked for Nike. No, I'm just kidding.
That was amazing.
It was amazing.
That was amazing.
It was really good.
Well, Mark, I am so happy that you are in town again. And Rocky, you too. And please come back and see us again. We always love having you.
NDEs next time, Tony.
What'd you say?
NDEs we'll talk about.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Again, tell us what's coming up in your website before we get out of here.
Be an event at the Arvada Center in Colorado, outside of Denver, on Saturday, July 29th. And then a couple days later, August 3rd, I am the keynote speaker at IANS, International Association of Near-Death Studies. For information on tickets and please visit evidenceofeternity.com. That's my website, same as my best-selling book, evidenceofeternity.com.
Well, we love having you. Thank you again.
Thanks, Tony.
Make sure you guys go to our web TV show on YouTube. It's called Truth Be Told Web TV, and truthbetoldwebtv.com. We love you guys. We'll see you next week right here on Truth Be Told.